So I want to continue here the discussion that we've started on the difference between nominalism and realism. Remember this. And we're really at the moment just looking at nominalism. And as an example, I have given you the quotation from, do you recognize that? Charles Darwin, saying that species is merely a term arbitrarily given for the sake of convenience to a set of individuals closely resembling each other. So he's saying that it's not that when we look at the species of humans, that there is something that's underlying and common to all of us, that's making us, or that there's an essence, as Aristotle would call it, or there's a form, as Plato would call it, the form of the human being. Rather, the nominalists, in this case Darwin, would be saying that individuals resemble one another, and on the basis of that resemblance, we group them together, and we arbitrarily give them a name such as, or we give a name to the group, such as human beings. Now, that is something that gets repeated in many areas of thought. In economics in particular, it's very prevalent. I'll just give you some more examples. It's good for you to pick it up when you see statements that seem a bit strange. Well, economics specializes in that sort of thing. So you take the example, there's a big movement in economics. There was this big movement of law in economics. And what the economists were really saying is that justice doesn't exist. The law is not about justice. Instead, the law is about efficiency. Now, an expression that is so crucial in economics is that expression of rationality. And we know that rationality, well, it's related to reason when somebody is, and I'm sure all of us, all of you know somebody who's not very reasonable, is unreasonable, even irrational. And by that, we've got a fair idea that what we mean by a person who's irrational. But in economics, we use that term differently. Just to give you an example, here is the definition given by Gary Becker, Nobel Prize winner in economics. He says, well, any deviation from utility maximization is considered irrational. In other words, rationality and irrationality is a matter of maximizing or not maximizing utility. You're gonna, when economists use terms that are not normally considered to be of part of economics, areas of investigation that are not necessarily economics, they bring to bear on those areas the tools of economics and the approach, again, that will be of employing a form of nominalism in dealing with issues of the new areas that are being considered. You might have heard of this expression here, imperialism of economics. And so economists have looked at the family, for instance, and here's what they say about the family. Children are durable consumption and production goods. Okay, so that's what children are. And we economists, of course, like to express it in those terms, because the moment we in economics reduce children to durable goods, we can value them. They've got a value. In fact, that's what I've got. The next quotation is a quotation by Cohen, and he says, husbands and wives may be viewed as unique capital inputs in the production of a family unit. So husband and wives are inputs, and what is being produced are is a family. Let me give you other examples to see how we are in economics. We are doing what I've called nominalism. Here I've got the expression of, can I see this? Lying. All right, we know what lying is. We've got a common sense view of lying, but the common sense view of lying may not correspond to the economic interpretation of lying. And so economists would say that lying is merely a measure to increase the utility through the avoidance of, can I read this? Through the avoidance of shame, which outweighs the disutility experienced from guilt. So in order to deal with non-market issues such as lying, or as part of this imperialism of economics, that where we're going on to different areas of investigation, we're reducing terms to something that we can deal with them economically in terms of economics. So lying is not about talking the truth or not talking the truth. Rather, lying is a matter of utility maximization in terms of shame and guilt. Fraud in economics is, it's not a criminal activity. It is simply a transfer. We have already, in the last clip, we heard de Mandeville talking about virtue. Well, something similar is said by a well-known economist, John Elster, and he says norms are tools of manipulation. Tools of manipulation used to dress up self-interests in a more presentable garb. So you can talk about norms. You know, it's the norm that you do A, B, and C. It's a norm that you're friendly to guests. Well, you're doing it. Those norms are not what are motivating you. You're motivated by self-interest. You just dress up that self-interest in terms of norms. This is Bentham. Virtue is a byproduct of utility maximization. Again, these general terms are universal terms that we use on a daily basis that are common sense to us. Once we take them through the grindstone of nominalism, then their meaning changes. And usually the meaning that will be deployed will be a meaning that will be, well, for us, it will be amenable to quantitative analysis. Let's see what's coming up next. Well, there you go. The terms utility maximization and choice are synonymous. Can you see there? Here we've got Princeton University economists saying that utility maximization and choice are synonymous. Why would they be saying that? Why would they be saying choice is really the same as utility maximization? Well, it's simple. Because when we talk about choice, it is something that has been done. You have made a choice. It is X number of this product at that price, or Y number of another product at a higher price. It is expressible in terms of rands and cents and in terms of quantities. And that in economics we like. You know, we want to be a science, and a science tends to be quantitative. And so we say that utility maximization is really the same as choice, is the choice. And why do we say utility maximization is the choice? Because utility is more difficult to express in terms of rands and cents. It's got sort of metaphysical connotations, you know. It's not necessarily quantifiable in a way that choice is quantifiable. And so a strategy in economics is to reduce everything, all meanings of words, to something that can be quantified. So here we've got a quotation from the Law and Economics movement. Sanctions are just prices for what is permitted. Sanctions are if you have to pay a fine for speeding, well, it's a sanction, you get punished. But according to an economist, there's nothing wrong with it as long as you're willing to pay the price for it. And to take that to an extreme, you've got something like this. Managers do not have an ethical duty to obey laws just because the laws exist. We've already heard that laws are about efficiency. And so if somebody doesn't want to obey a law, a regulatory law in commerce, for instance, well, then probably because he's got a better idea what is efficient and what is profitable than does the judge or the lawmaker. And so managers not only may, but also should violate the rules when it is profitable. Because after all, the law is about nothing else but efficiency, and the more profitable your activity is, the more likely it is that it is actually exploiting efficiency gains. And so it goes on and on and on. Now, if you've done economics for long enough, you would have come across the name Pareto, Wilfredo Pareto. If you've done sociology, you would have heard about Wilfredo Pareto. In economics, we know him in terms of the expression of Pareto optimality. That is, Pareto optimality, you are performing an action and the quantity and the amount of that action so that you could not, if you were to rearrange the way you do things, you wouldn't be able to get to a high utility. Or in exchange between individuals, you wouldn't be able to get to a high utility. Once you're at that point, you've got Pareto optimality. Now, Pareto was writing around 120 years ago, and he was very explicit about it. He called himself, "I am the most nominalist of nominalists." And we see him applying that in terms of his statement about economic theory. The theory of economic science, I got to read this. The theory of economic science thus acquires the rigor of rational mechanics. We want to be scientific. We want to be like mechanics. It deduces its results from experience without bringing in any metaphysical entity such as utility. Can you see how this is a form of nominalism? It is really saying that metaphysical expressions such as utility, we can do without that, and we can reduce, or we can really change the meaning of words in a way that makes those words amenable to makes it amenable to quantitative analysis.